welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. Little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks ? Kicks.
Boy, just like that, we're back and we're set for UFC Rodriguez versus Lemos. As always, one half your host to do, Craig Allen. Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. With me to my left, to your right, as always, Matt Allen on the respective socials at Matt Allen FNP. Now, at Matt Allen FNP, that chat is going nuts. Elizabeth Morris really wants to hear a parlay. Not a gosh darn chance. You know why, Elizabeth? You know why? Because I've already got it teed up. The entire card. It's a Detective Crashmore card. Just a bunch of unprofessional BS. And that's pretty much the story of this entire thing. And I mean, even our fight in the night picks are a little bit skewed now because of it. Wade's Venture's hanging out. Clay is hanging out. We've got Phoenix hanging out. Chad is hanging out asking for a like. VT, Joe, Donnie Dimes.
How we doing, everybody?
There's going to be a lot of people over there in the chat. I printed off a shirt, Matt, for this show. Pop and Popcorn Fight. The whole gosh darn card is a bunch of pop and popcorn fights. I don't know why I would even do a gosh darn thing with this entire card, because it's just a bunch of unprofessional BS.
It is a lot of unprofessional BS, and I do agree with you on that, but I still think that there's a good amount of fun fights on this card. Again, I pointed to the co-main event all throughout this week, and that's really what I've been excited most about for today. Daniel Rodriguez, Neil Magny is a fun fight, and a good fight for the division, because it's always fun to see sort of the longtime contender fight a young, up-and-coming, kind of rising star, if you will. And I know D-Rod's not necessarily a rising star. He's been around for a little while now. The average UFC fan knows who he is, but still, he hasn't fought a lot of those guys in the top 15, and at this point of Neil Magny's career, I'm convinced he's fought everyone in the top 15, so I'm really excited for that fight. I think it's going to be a great one, because with Magny, it's either a fight that you get over and you look great and great things are going to happen, or it's a step that's a little bit too far and that fighter then has to go back and make some adjustments, so I'm extremely excited for that one. But I know we're both a little upset. No Jailton Almeida today.
And I mean, Carlo M hitting up the super chat, much appreciated. Damari Sims is talking about Hamzat Shemaya punished for the weight miss and impacting weight misses. Listen, if you're not going to pop your shirt off, pop the trunks off, pop everything off, and stand behind the cone ashamed to weigh in, you're just going to accept that you missed weight. I saw that Adam Martin threw that tweet out there, so piggybacking a little bit off that, credit where credit's due.
Shayna Young cut her hair off. So
yeah,
I respect that.
Yeah, I mean, also, she had to pull out of her last scheduled fight against Miranda Maverick because she couldn't make the weight. But yeah, this is one of those cards, like, we throw it over to the fight of the night screen. Mario Bautista, Benito Lopez. This, of course, the graphic from the start of the week. Benito was filling up on yogurts.
He was.
The old yogurt machine that he is, and Benito missed weight. I still think this is going to be a good fight for what it's worth, especially at the start, because we haven't seen Benito for 3 years, but you know, long-range attacks. Heavy with the volume, with the peppering of the power in those shots. And then the big thing, both guys love flying knees. Mario Bautista's on a heater right now. Oh, yeah. I think this is going to be a fun fight.
It really is power versus speed in this matchup. And I know the weight miss is going to concern a lot of people going into the fight, because let's say Lopez did have a very serious weight cut, and he's not as durable as he would have otherwise been going into today. I don't think Mario Bautista is the type of guy you want to test your overall durability when you're fighting him. But I just think stylistically, this is a great fight. No matter what the weight is, no matter what weight they're fighting at, I think they're just stylistically going to make a very fun fight. But you're right, Bautista is on quite a bit of a heater right now, so it was initially quite surprising to see these two guys matched up, but I still think Benito Lopez is going to make a great account of himself.
Phoenix talking about Mark Hunt. Phoenix, I missed that. I don't know if
I saw, he knocked out a rugby player who became a boxer.
The second part, Grant Dawson, Mark Madsen, graphic from the start of the week. Grant Dawson, as I struggle to talk. Grant Dawson missed weight. Didn't pop the shorts off. Had some rumblings that he was going to miss the weight an hour before he weighed in. Missed weight. Former featherweight. Matt, what the hell?
See it. You know what I always call these? The John Lineker. John Lineker's my favorite fighter to have weight issues at one weight, move up to another weight, and then immediately start having weight issues again. I know Kelvin Gastelum's another fighter who at 185 has some close makes, even though I don't think he has officially missed weight there. It's always been a tough weight cut for him. For Grant Dawson, though, he's just a guy who's always left you wanting more, and I think that's fair to say. Even if you look at some of the biggest wins on his career, look at the Santos knockout he was able to get, that vicious back fist he was able to score. He was getting out grappled for large portions of that fight, and even in the big highs he has had in the UFC, because again, you don't become a hyped up prospect without having the skills that people can get really excited about. Grant Dawson always just seems to have that oh by the way with him, and I did feel like this fight against Mark Madsen was just a good reintroduction for him to the average UFC fan at 155 pounds, but now I'll be very curious to see how the tough weight cut does affect him against a guy who is known for his good cardio and his high work rate.
Cam saying no more QMK parlays. Cam,
It's been a minute.
I haven't done a QMK parlay in months. They went up in flames, just like this card. But Matt, when we do focus in on this, if this is your first time tuning in for Fight Night Picks, question mark kicks, we do thank you. There's a lot of pop and popcorn on this card. There's a lot of lower level fights. There's a lot of bullish. There's a lot of just filler, like you're making a meatloaf. They threw a lot of breadcrumbs in and a couple of pieces of meat up at the top. You get a big time fight. In the main event, the co-main event's quite good, but of course, a couple of people have mentioned it. Parisian versus Sherman is off of the card. Parisian out due to some health concerns, so ultimately we're down to 11, and that makes it very tough to try and up your percentages when you're picking some of these fights.
It certainly is. I have a fun basketball reference for the main event, though, that I'm excited to get into.
All right, Matt. Well, we'll move down to the bottom of this card. We have Ramona Pascual and Tamires Vidal. Tamires Vidal making the UFC debut. Tamires Vidal, one of a few fighters, there's 3 on this card, coming in from Brazil on, I wouldn't say short notice, but it's like late notice. Now, they've had full camps for these fights, but a lot of people couldn't leave Brazil at the start of the week, showed up late on Wednesday. And for Tamires Vidal, she was one. Now, she made weight. Ramona Pascual did not make weight. Now, for Ramona, she's talked about wanting to get back down to 135 in the past. I mentioned it at the start of the week. I'll mention it one more time. If you look at it for both of these women and you're going to say, well, Ramona's the bigger woman. She's always the bigger woman. She's going to win. I saw a lot of comments like that, Matt, on the internet. Tamires Vidal, 4-0 at featherweight, 2-1 at bantamweight. I don't know what people are talking about. Tamires Vidal's fought at featherweight quite a bit in her career. For Ramona Pascual, she's fought 5 times at 145. She's 2-3. She's had catch weights between 145 and 135, so 137, 140. She's 2-1 in those. She's 2-0 at bantamweight, but her bantamweight fight, she fought an 0-0 fighter and a 4-5 fighter. So, Matt, I look at this one. I know Trovolin's fired up about this card, 100%. But when you're focusing in on this one, guys, pop and popcorn. I look at this one. Tamires Vidal, I know she has a better record. She's not a great fighter. And
Neither one of these two are.
I don't see her fighting for a title anytime soon. I don't see her cracking the top 15. And hopefully that says a lot for people because there's 6 fighters outside of the top 15 in the women's bantamweight division right now. Tamires Vidal clubs an overhand right, walks into punches with her hands down, clinches for large portions of the fight. When she gets it to the mat, sometimes she gets submission finishes like she did in her last fight where she capitalized on her opponent's mistakes, where her opponent tried to go for the head and arm throw, got it one time, and then got kind of like just ground out in some of the wrestling exchanges, ultimately got submitted, but her opponent was also a boxer. So it was a really tough one when you're trying to make a prediction.
I think control time is going to be really important in this fight because for Pascual, she is a fighter who is quite steady. Again, we always talk about the knees up the middle, how she just walked forward into a lot of her exchanges, which is good for her, but it hasn't really worked out in the UFC up until that point, and we have yet to see any sustained periods of success for her, which is unfortunate to see, especially on the feet. Now, in a matchup like this, I do expect her to have that kind of an edge on the feet. I do think up the middle, again, with some of those attacks, she will be able to have success, but I agree with you 100%. I think the clinch of Vidal is going to be very important in this fight. Not saying she's going to be super offensive with it, like a Cub Swanson, Dennis Seaver. There's a fun little reference for some of you guys who've been around for a while, but I do think that the control time overall is going to be very important. Pascual, I don't think is a damaging enough striker to really make enough happen in those 90-second, 2-minute openings in the round that I think will be there for her to have some success, but I think if she isn't able to get a lot of work done, especially early, I think the fight might be difficult for her.
Hey, everybody out there, I know it sounds like we're being negative. You know what Matt just said? the control time's gonna win the fight. You know
We
how
don't- you know
how
what?
awful that is?
I'm not going to say that when Dustin Poirier fights Michael Chandler next week. I can tell you that for free, so...
So you look at this one, Matt, at Fight Night Picks, 55% of those that voted picked Vidal to get the win, 45% going with Ramona Pascual. Listen, the last two picks that I've changed, I got them wrong. Piera Rodriguez, Sam Hughes, and then I had Makachev and Oliveira. But if you look at this one, Tamires Vidal open -235, -131. So the lines come down quite a bit. Ramona Pascual open +200, +108. I'm going to stick with Pascual in this one. Of course, you've seen her do some work, obviously, on the regional scene. She has a Muay Thai background, 6-1 as a pro Muay Thai artist. If you look at it in MMA, she had the shinier record, obviously, with the one loss, but the two fights that she's had, Josiane Nunes, 8 days notice, just like trying to tenderize a steak, and she couldn't get a finish in that one. The fight against Jocelyn Edwards blew the load in the first round, almost got the finish with those body shots. Knees are a big part of Pascual's game. Upper body strength is also a big attribute that she possesses. I think she's going to be able to defend some of those takedowns, work it to the body, work in her own striking. I think she's a better striker than Vidal. If it hits the mat, you could see a big-time win for Vidal. But I'll go with Pascual here as now the slight underdog as the week's gone on. So, Matt, we focus in on our next fight. And gosh darn it, look at that. We'll let Crashmore have his due. Carlos Candelario missed weight.
You hate that.
Yeah, absolutely hate to see it.
I like Jake Hadley a good amount at the start of the week, Craig.
Yeah, the thing that I don't like, though, is Jake Hadley's a really big favorite in this fight.
That's a good point.
And he was a big favorite at the start of the week. He's still a big favorite. Open -250, -271. Carlos Candelario, open +210, +218. I see these guys as very close to being equals in a lot of respects in MMA. I think that Candelario is actually the better striker out of the two. Jake Hadley can flow a little bit with his boxing. I think the southpaw to southpaw stances, that's what's going to make this one a lot of fun. And of course, style for style, they're very similar. Candelario gets a lot done with his offensive takedowns. Not the best when he's on his back, and he can kind of struggle when he's trying to get back up and out of position. For Jake Hadley, the same can be said. He got bucked off. He got in some bad spots against one Alan Nascimento, a dark horse to be ranked in a division. In a division that has a lot of fighters. You guys think that one win gets you into the rankings. There's 15 ranked fighters. There's 18 to 20 that are unranked now at flyweight. So it is a very, very, large skill base that you have right now.
And isn't it great to see that in a division that almost got completely cut by the UFC only a few short years ago? Like, you have to remember, Ben Askren just fought Jake Paul. I guess he didn't just fight him. Like, that was a couple years ago now. So he's been retired for a hot minute. And Demetrius Johnson's still doing the damn thing over there at one championship. And it's just been a really long time. And we're very far removed from the once close to being purged flyweight division. So it is really nice to see it in a great spot right now. Because I couldn't agree more. The flyweight division's in a great spot right now. The top 15 is very deep. Any guy in the top 10 you feel like could have a real good chance against anybody, and there's great fighters outside the rankings, but when you do look at this matchup, I do agree with you. I think Candelario does have a slight edge on the feet, but you're right. When Jake Hadley has the threat at the takedown mixed in with his own boxing, he's a very difficult fighter to go up there against, and he's a very physical guy for not being very big. I know we don't often think about the flyweight division, the bantamweight division, for being like physically imposing divisions for the guys, but Hadley's someone who, once he gets his wrestling going, he is very difficult to get off of you, and that's why I do like Hadley in this matchup. I just really like the work rate that he's able to go out there and use. And if you just completely get rid of him and kind of forget about him based on his last performance, I think you're doing him a huge disservice. Because like you said, Alan Nascimento is an extremely talented fighter, and a fighter who will, well, much sooner rather than later, be in the top 15. So I think Hadley can still go on and have a very successful career. I will just be very curious to see how successful he can be, because for me, this is more of a ceiling readjustment fight than anything, because I do like Hadley in the matchup.
Well, I'm really eager to hear who people have in this matchup. Just my 2 cents saying Hadley for me here, and Nick Rodriguez. Hadley would take both of you guys down at the same time.
Easily.
Well, yeah, like a UFC fighter would take down non-guys.
He comes into the paint, though. I'll block that shot 10 rows into the crowd.
And the comparison doesn't live. But again, Jake Hadley, big favorite in the matchup. And if you have a look at Fight Night Picks for the total votes here, Orlando's saying Hadley will win by knockout. I don't know if he's going to win by knockout. 78% have Hadley to get the win. He's a giant favorite. I would take Hadley with Candelario. My problem is he tends to slow down in fights. He missed weight in this matchup for flyweight. So, again, so far to kick off his UFC career, he loses on Dana White's Contender Series to Victor Altamirano. He takes on Tatsuro Taira. He makes weight successfully in that fight, but he misses it here. And against Victor Altamirano, 126 wasn't an issue there. In CS, he was fighting at bantamweight before he ended up in the UFC. So, again, I'm going to go with him. I'm going to go with Jake Hadley to get the win. I think the wrestling edge is going to win it out for him. Disappointed somewhat from what I saw in his debut, just based on the fact that he was a giant favorite in that fight as well. But I will go with Hadley. Again, odds give me a little bit of pause here.
No, I agree 100%. Would you agree with me, though? This is one of the better fights in the card, I would say. Like, entertainment-wise, I think
doesn't take much.
Okay, that's fair. But still, I'm actually genuinely excited for this matchup. I think it's going to be a really fun fight.
Chad, the UFC dad, might be safe to say the loser gets cut. I mean, my guy Magomed Mustafayev got cut when his opponent couldn't get it released from the contract he was with another promotion under. So, I don't know anymore. You look at some of the fights that are announced, I sound like really down and jaded. Look at some of the fights that are announced. There's fighters that it's like, what? Huh? Like Christoph Jotko's not around anymore, but this guy is? It's weird.
Jotko had just been around for so long, though. You never thought he was going to go on a run. He's like 34.
We do have somebody that wants to see me chug a Molson. I have some Moxie soda, the official soda of the state of Maine for this Canadian. It's great stuff. Matt, Johnny Munoz Jr. is taking on Luidvik Sholinian, and I think this is a really fun fight. Yeah. I mean, for Luidvik, he was on the national team for wrestling with Ukraine. He was on the Ukrainian amateur MMA team. 9-1-1 coming into the UFC. Short notice opportunity. He's taking on Jack Shore. Loses that fight somewhat predictably. I don't really put too much stock into that one because from Sholinian, you look at the win over Mitra Poso that he had on The Ultimate Fighter, and that was a decent win. That was one of those sudden death third round type of fights where it goes to the decision. And honestly, for me, first round Raposo, second round Sholinian, third round, I guess there was more control time for Sholinian, but neither guy did all that much, and he walked him down. When I did look at this one, Matt, like I do like what I see out of Sholinian with the fact that he can take guys down, he can hold them down. He doesn't tend to do a lot of damage with it. He doesn't really get in a lot of positions to submit his opponent. He very much is position over anything once he gets it down in the mat. Whereas Johnny Munoz Jr., very accredited jiu-jitsu player. Johnny Munoz Sr., also Kid Kvenbo, quite a good trainer in that respect. And I do like the fact that for Munoz, he has trained at Entram Gym to work some of his striking. Hate the volume numbers with the accuracy because he looked a little bit like Ricky Tercios his last time out.
Didn't look great.
Swinging at air and hoping he hits something. So for me, I do like Munoz in this matchup. Again, I didn't love the odds at the start of the week. It is worth mentioning. For Munoz, he's another big favorite, just like Jake Hadley. Munoz open -200, -250. For Sholinian, open +170, +204. If Sholinian can get the fight down to the mat, if he can avoid some of those bad positions, if he can log a lot of time, and maybe even damage with some of the takedowns that he's able to incur. Because a lot of people don't talk about that. They just say takedown. Well, if you took him down, you didn't do anything. It's not that bad. But if you slam somebody down, you do damage with your slams.
It's not worth like that much.
For me, I do like Munoz. Clay saying rooting for Munoz, picking Munoz. Jerry saying Munoz big win. And Chad saying UF alums stand up. I don't know, University of Florida? I don't know. Just my 2 cents once the quick draw. But Matt, on this one, I have Munoz at the start of the week. You do as well.
Johnny Munoz Jr. reminds me of, it's like cheering for Delano Banton, the Raptor.
He sucks.
No, he doesn't. You ever watch him play?
Slow as molasses.
Perfect.
I watched all of Summer League. He was terrible.
Great. I'm not even going to start with that. My point is, Delano Banton has all the skills. Sometimes he's a really good shooter. Sometimes he can drive to the hoop. Sometimes he's a good playmaker. It's rare that he's going to put all of those things together, though, in a game and look really good at each one of those things. For Munoz, it is very much the same. You know the potential is there in a lot of his skill set. It's just a matter of finally refining it and getting it all together. But I do agree with you. I like him in this matchup for his ability to get damage. And that's the real thing about Luidvik's style. I like his control, I like his wrestling, and I really like how physical he is with his own style. The problem is, though, when you're not a guy who goes out there and does a lot of damaging moves, especially against Munoz, who has a high probability of getting a finish either with a submission, and even on the feet, I still feel like we could see him continue to level up, just improve some of that accuracy as he goes along. I think this is going to be a fun fight, like you had mentioned, but I do still like Johnny Munoz Jr.
For Luidvik, he has nice wins on his record. He
does.
Beat Vince Cachero by split. He beat Yuma Horiuchi by split. Those are good, but the trouble is, when he's kind of trying to go for his takedown, he's initiating, he's getting that cage control, he has a hard time cutting the cage. He tends to follow his opponent a lot. And for me, I just see Munoz just circling out, hitting him with a couple of shots and bop. I mean, I didn't love the knockout loss that Munoz had his last time out. He ducked under for the double leg. Gravely came up with the uppercut and knocked him out. So it was a tricky one, but for me, I do like Munoz in this one. We will have a look before we move on just to talk about your votes over on Instagram.
Really,
at
Munoz
Fight Night
would be a big
Picks.
favorite.
Yeah, 72% going with Munoz to get the win, 28% on Sholinian. All right,
It's a
Matt.
Tyler Hero jersey for those asking.
All right, Matt. For Jack Harlow, he probably likes the fight between Polyana, Viana, and Jinh Frey. He's probably a fan of the arts, the martial arts, and the grappling arts, so to speak. For Polyana, Viana, she can get taken down. She will take that arm. And for Jinh Frey, you do look at her body of work outside of the UFC, and it very much was a lot of takedowns, control time. Now, a little bit more than Luidvik Sholinian because she would go for, some ground and pound, some submissions. She would threaten with things. For Polyana Viana, offensive wrestling, next to nil from the fights that we've seen in the UFC. However, her striking has turned up a little bit. Now, that is funny to say because if you do look at her fight against Amanda Hebos, she knocks her out. But if you do look at Viana, she will kind of throw caution to the wind, throw everything out there, and when it comes to the grappling on the mat, she will threaten with a lot of submissions, which makes it tough for a lot of her opponents. I see Voodoo Wiz saying, I'll take Frey. Nick Rodriguez, Polyana should do, the paywall stuff. I don't know if that's what's up, but the videos that I've seen on the internet, on Twitter this week have been different.
You're in the corners of the internet.
Yeah.
Just
the Underground Whisper Network
wow.
or Reddit. But Matt, when you do look at this fight, for the odds, it is very close, and it was close at the start of the week. Jinh Frey is an underdog here, open plus 120. Went as far down as a minus 120, now at a plus 118. So she's about where she was when the odds came out. And that should be said because sometimes when you go on best fight odds, the odds pop up automatically, and then they adjust themselves. People were hot and horny to go with Jinh Frey to get the win. And now all of a sudden, Polyana Viana, minus 143 favorite. I definitely felt better when I took her when the line was about par. And now Viana, bigger favorite. We were split on this pick at the start of the week.
You put any money on this fight, don't do it. It's just a bad idea. Here's the thing. For Jinh Frey, I think she can make this fight not only entertaining, but I think she can win this fight with her offensive wrestling. I think those two things are going to be a really big key. But you're right. Offensive wrestling, someone who doesn't have good wrestling but good grappling, doesn't necessarily sound like the best path to victory. But I think Jinh Frey is an intelligent enough grappler to where when she is in that top position, she can still have success. But I gotta be honest, I don't know how aesthetically pleasing this fight's going to be because I can see Viana backing up a lot, really using her awkward striking to try to keep Frey at bay. And then if Frey does get on top, I can see her just creating a lot of holding, maybe not the most separation, because if she does try to, pass the guard or get into the half guard or even mount on Viana, that's going to create that separation that then is going to help Polyana either scramble or go for her own type of submission. So it's going to be a risky style if Jinh Frey wants to win this fight, but I think if she does go for offensive takedowns and uses clinch control too, because that's the thing about Polyana. She is the most physically strong fighter. She's a big fighter for the division, but I can relate.
Weird, right?
Exactly. I can relate. Like, I'm tall and thin. It happens. In weight classes, that's the thing. If you're tall, you normally can't be as strong because everyone has to weigh the same. And for Polyana, it almost is, not that she cuts too much weight, but she's almost a little bit too big for the division. I can see a world where either one of these ladies is able to get a win, but I think this is an oddly important fight because the loser of this, how much more are they really going to be able to prove to us in the future?
It's a tough one. You have a look at the total votes at Fight Night Picks. 71% going with Viana to get the win. Just My 2 cents has Jinh Frey. Voodoo Wiz has Jinh Frey. Who else? You got Nick Rodriguez. I have Viana at plus 100. And now she's a minus 145 favorite, so I guess she did quite well there. Canadians for the cup, I wish. They're playing all right. You know what? They lost to Buffalo in overtime the other night. It wasn't the worst game ever.
Didn't Drake say skating through this album like the Montreal Canadiens?
I actually like Frey by decision only because Viana... you know what? You look at this one, it's definitely career ender is what Clay is saying. I texted Matt in the middle of the week, so now I'm just airing out the dirty laundry. My text was, I'll be picking Pascual, Frey, and Rodriguez. Rather, Rodriguez now. Polyana Viana was one of the fighters that showed up on Wednesday due to those travel delays. She did make the weight for this one. It is a very close fight. Do I live by my text, Matt?
Probably not.
Probably not.
I don't think you cutting weight like a day later really matters in the grand scheme of things. If you were able to successfully make the weight, that's the way I've been looking at the weight misses, not to cut you off. It's just my kind of whole philosophy going into this episode was, first of all, applaud all the Brazilian fighters who were able to make weight. They had the hardest time doing it, and they were all able to do so. So that's very impressive. Let's just get that out of the way. Nate Maness also, shout out to that guy who weighs 174 pounds today.
That was a meme, Matt.
Oh, was it? Okay, I'm just like, wow, he is huge. But it's wild how some people are able to do these dramatic weight cuts. Think about Paul Felder when he had his return against RDA. And then other people just, they don't really seem to put that much effort into it, which is disappointing to see.
All right, Matt, I'm switching the pick. I'm going with Jinh Frey. I've been 0-2 with switching the picks here lately. I don't like the travel delays for Polyana, Viana. What's the, like... I hate to steal it from a noted podcaster, comedian, and former fighter, but Bappa, what are we doing here? Like, I don't know.
That's why I didn't pick her.
I don't know what the damn point is, so I'm going to go with Jinh Frey. I think the forward pressure, the 1-2 boxing combination, she does have quite a bit of zip behind those shots, and I don't like the fact that for Viana, historically, in her UFC tenure, tends to throw more and accept less than what Jinh Frey throws out there, but... I will go with Jinh Frey in the matchup, and I think her offensive wrestling is pretty good. Branch above. Doesn't see how so many people think Jinh Frey will win. Branch above, if I'm switching a pick on a low-level women's MMA fight, it's pot and popcorn, bud. This is the one where people like to tee-hee and laugh. Matt, Benito Lopez, my guy. So excited to see him fight. Detective Crashmore from I Think You Should Leave. Benito Lopez misses the weight. His Instagram story was puzzling when he said it was one of the easiest weight cuts he's ever had after 3 years away.
Probably because he didn't cut like the extra 2.5 pounds he normally would have to.
We laugh. You know what sucks, guys? You know what sucks? Like, this has been a weird episode of Question Mark Kicks. I like Benito Lopez. I like his fights. They're exciting. I think he's a good fighter. I thought he was a good fighter before he took 3 years away.
He's a better fighter than his UFC tenure would suggest.
My God, he's 3-1. Like, he was on fire. Now, one of his wins, the win over Vince Morales. Vince Morales won that fight. The other part about it is, Matt, for Benito Lopez, people are like, oh man, he's been away, he's been selling houses. Go on his Instagram, he's been selling houses for like 5 months. That hasn't been 3 years, you dorks. But when you look at this one, Matt, for Benito Lopez, I think he could catch Mario Bautista with one of those odd angle, offbeat shots. You saw Trevin Jones was able to do it. I mean, Trevin Jones, he's chopped liver now for all the fans. But for me, I do like Mario Bautista. I mean, the thing that you can say, he's continued to progress and fight better competition. And he's been able to get those finishes. So I do like Mario Bautista in this matchup. I'm eager to see what we get out of Benito Lopez. But I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
It's weird that I feel like every Mario Bautista prediction from here on to ever, like, we keep on doing these, is going to be the exact same. Like, he's a really heavy-handed boxer. He's got good combinations. The power shots he is going to be susceptible to every now and then because he does load up a little bit on his own shots. But that's the bread and bones game of, like, a lot of different bread and butter games, sorry. A bare bones and bread and butter just get combined in my head. But that's the game of a lot of different fighters. They kind of live by the sword and die by the sword. But that's always going to make Mario Bautista a much more entertaining than average fighter, and that's why I think people are always going to get excited for his fights, because I had people this week on Twitter reach out, just be like, I'm more excited for a Mario Bautista fight than an average unranked fighter, and it's the truth. Like, he is in that kind of, and this is a weird fighter to bring up now, but remember when Emil Mech didn't do anything, but people really liked him? Like, yeah. I know he was good before he came to the UFC, knocked out Paul Harris, but he was always much more popular than sort of what his standing was in the division. I think Mario Bautista has a much higher ceiling as a mixed martial artist, of course, but I feel like he somewhat occupies that spot right now for the division. People are going to tune in because they know how exciting he is, and I think this matchup's going to bring the best out of both guys. I agree with you 100% too. With Lopez's style, he's a shifty striker, he's very technical too, and if Bautista does have a big hole in his game, I think Lopez could start to download the game plan and find it as the fight progresses. I just think it's going to take a long time for him to eat some power shots.
To me, he doesn't fight like that. Benito Lopez is a one-round guy. Like, he goes out there and pours it on from the jump.
No, you're right.
He struggles as fights go on, so I don't see him downloading much of a game plan in this fight.
I think you're right. Don't get me wrong. It's just if he goes out there and starts throwing hands with Mario Bautista after missing weight, I don't know if that's the best way to win either. That's why I find myself continuously siding with Mario Bautista. I just think this is a difficult matchup for Benito Lopez.
Yeah, it's a really hard one to come back into. I mean, 85% of the fans at Fight Night Picks going with Benito Lopez to get the win. There's a lot of really big favorites on this card. Lopez is one of them. Open -260, -362. And for Benito Lopez, open +220, +281. So it is very, very tough if you want to go with Benito Lopez. Love the fight style. Wish we got to see him more. Lost to the Bermuda's Triangle. It is what it is. But yeah, both of us going with Mario Bautista. Matt, the next fight, Miranda Maverick taking on Shanna Young. Now, we had originally done this video for UFC 278. Shanna Young fell out of the fight the day before weigh-in. She was suffering from weight-cutting complications, and for this one, she missed weight originally. So at the start, you got to throw Crashmore out there. But then you take Crashmore away because Shanna Young cut her hair.
I was gonna say, she went from like this to this.
And she made weight. So good for Shanna Young to make the weight. I don't think it makes an ounce of difference. I think Miranda Maverick wins this fight. Maverick won their first pairing at the Invicta Phoenix Rising tournament series. Young kind of had her on like it was an odd angle shot. She kind of pushed her forward at the same time that Maverick lost her footing. So Young looked really good in that second. Maverick gets back up, gets into a takedown position up against the clinch, gets the fight down to the mat, finishes the fight. For me, yeah, I like Miranda Maverick in this one. Shanna Young did show us something, though, in her last matchup against Gina Mazzani. A, made weight at flyweight, which I thought was crazy at the time, but B, got pieced up in the first round and then showed up in the second round. So Shanna Young has that Nate Maness to her. They got that dog. So I do like that out of Shanna Young, but for me, I do like Miranda Maverick here. I mean, I still think that she does have a high enough ceiling in this division. It's just the fact that you got to grow and mature at the same time.
Miranda Maverick's like the James Wiseman of this division, was picked very high, had a lot of potential, and we're still kind of waiting for it. You'll get a glimpse of it here or there, but for the most part, she has left people wanting more. And I got to stop doing this because I feel like I'm being hard on Sean Anik, but I do go back to the fact that there were people who have a lot of MMA knowledge who thought that she was genuinely one of like the top 5 fighters in the division when she was only a fight into her UFC career. This is the type of ceiling that Miranda Maverick had projected for her. So I do feel like there is still a high ceiling for her. I do agree with you. She's a very good athlete for this division, very physically strong, but I do expect this fight to go very similar to their first matchup. I like the offensive takedown from Miranda Maverick. She is very physically strong, like I just mentioned, which is weird to say when you're fighting someone as big as Shanna Young, especially in this weight class, but I like Maverick, especially for her wrestling. It's just some matchups are difficult matchups for fighters. Like Islam Makhachev would always be a tough matchup for like Thiago Moises, for instance, because like Moises is okay with getting taken down, so it's a tough guy to fight when you're fighting Islam. It's a tough fight for Shanna Young to fight someone who's as dedicated to the wrestling as someone like Miranda Maverick.
Maverick open minus 300, minus 786. It's a pop and popcorn fight, folks. Shanna Young open plus 250. She's a plus, what was that now? Plus 532. Underdog, Branch Above saying still have Maverick by decision. Erin Blanchfield came along. She's got a fight coming up next weekend. It's an odd matchup for Erin Blanchfield, but Matt, the votes here, 95% Fight Night picks going with Miranda Maverick to get the win. Donnie Dimes, who will absolutely dominate Molly McCann. Yeah, that's why it's a weird fight. Erin Blanchfield, Molly McCann.
Erin Blanchfield.
They built up Molly McCann, just try and knock her down a peg at the end of the year. It's a really odd pairing. You just keep feeding her fighters like the Tamires Vidals of the world. Sam, you don't have to hit the super chat to do that. That's not very nice. But the picture that he has right there, going back to Waterloo where the vampires hang out, I recognize that from anywhere. Matt, we move into our next fight. We have Darrick Minner taking on Shayilan Nuerdanbieke. This is a fight that's weird because I saw XBL on Twitch over there, always tweeting out and having fun with the MMA, and the Cappers had a lot of people taking Shayilan Nuerdanbieke at the start of this week. And I said in this video, I kind of feel weird about it because for Darrick Minner, he's a killer-be-killed grappler. You know this, I know this, everybody knows it. He's an economical striker. He's going to try and pop, float down, get the takedown. He very much is a guy that fights at Glory MMA and Fitness. And for James Krause, is it weird that he has a channel like ours now when you're a coach? I find that weird. Santino DeFranco has one too. Like a lot of coaches have these pick'em channels. It's got to be weird if you pick against somebody and then they come train at your gym. But for James Krause, he's got his work cut out for him because for Minner, he's had a couple of tough losses last 2 times out. Lost to Ryan Hall's not that great, but you look at the one against Darren Elkins, looked good at the start. Looked awful in the second round. Poor Darrick in that one. And for Nuerdanbieke, he's looked very good. Steve Spiros, yeah, exactly. That's just a classic video, but unfortunate for Steve Spiros.
Happy knows his memes. Thank you for the super chat.
Hope nothing but the best, so thanks for the super chat. But in this matchup, Matt, I'm eager to hear it from a lot of people. Chris Rock, Darrick Minner is the guy using jokes. Well, that's tough. Nick is going with Shayilan Nuerdanbieke. For me, I can't believe Shayilan Nuerdanbieke makes featherweight, but listen, slow golf clap for him because he did it this week.
It is insane.
I think he's quite physically imposing. I don't like his takedown defense. I like his get-up abilities, a little bit like Derek Lewis, even though his second round against TJ Brown he wasn't. And for Darrick Minner, if you like him, he does train with downtown TJ Brown, and it could be an opportunity to try and right some of the wrongs that Brown had in his fight against Nuerdanbieke. That was Nuerdanbieke's last win, but I like Shayilan not just adding to his record from his last time out, the fact that he switched it up to Killcliff FC in his own right. The China top team guys are doing something right now. I thought that Li Jingliang beat Daniel Rodriguez, and I can talk about that later on. But for Nuerdanbieke, great level training partner there. I bet you he's probably wrestling. If Zhang Wei Li's wrestling with Francis Ngannou, I bet you Shayilan Nuerdanbieke's wrestling with Brendan Allen at Killcliff.
I just remember watching a lot of Zabumafu growing up, and
With
it's
the
like,
Crowd
oh,
Brothers.
you know how strong ants are, like, compared to their body? Wei Li is built from the same. It is wild how strong that woman is. This is a really fun fight, though, and I find it really difficult to predict because you find yourself thinking about all the positives Darrick Minner has in his game. Because, like you said, offensively, he is a difficult fighter to deal with his grappling on the mat. He can threaten with ground and pound. That opens up a submission game. Like, there's just a lot you have to think about when you're dealing with a guy like Darrick Minner on the mat. But Shayilan might just have the kind of skill set that is going to work against him. Now, I do worry about his sort of bend but not break grappling defense because I do think there's a world where Darrick Minner gets on top of him and immediately has a lot of success with his own offensive grappling. But I do think at a certain point, Nuerdanbieke's striking is going to get to Darrick Minner and at least make him more hesitant with some of his entries. And I think if that's the case, Shayilan should have a lot more success.
Yeah, you look at the odds in the matchup. Darrick Minner, I mean, his last fight again, Ryan Hall, Darren Elkin, Shayilan Nuerdanbieke. Minner open plus 170, plus 180 right now. For Nuerdanbieke, I don't love the comeback. Minus 200 at open, minus 222 right now. We have a look at Fight Night picks for the total votes on this one. And in our Instagram story, 61% going with Shayilan Nuerdanbieke in the fight. And of course, you know him for his fights against TJ Brown, Sean Soriano, and a loss to Josh Culibao. Josh Culibao just had a fight announced, and I went, what? Why are they doing that to him? But again,
Who's he fighting?
UFC fights don't make a lot of sense. We'll look it up as we go along, Matt. But do you have any parting thoughts on this one? I mean, again,
Not really.
both guys can grapple. Minner doesn't really get hit much on the feet, but he doesn't really throw much for volume. Nuerdanbieke throws hammers out of his right hand and sometimes just waits, and I don't like that.
But I do think he's the more damaging fighter as this fight goes along. So as long as there's not a submission finish during the fight, I do favor Shayilan.
Culibao taking on Melzik Bogdasarian.
Tough fight.
You fight tough guys, and then all of a sudden you fight Melzik Bogdasarian. It's just an oddball matchup. Phoenix saying Shayilan sending Minner to Bellator tonight. Bellator. Matt, our next fight, Grant Dawson taking on Mark Madsen. The question, Lord Nikon, you guys ready for the Blazers Jazz?
I would be so happy if, because now they hand out awards for like conference finals MVP. Could you imagine they're like, and now with the Magic Jordan Award or Magic Johnson Award,
Jordan Clarkson?
Lauri Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen's like crying. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. It is wild how good both those teams have started out the season. I think the Blazers are a good playoff team. The Jazz cannot sustain this.
All right, Matt. So the next fight, we have Grant Dawson taking on Mark Madsen. It's customary. Grant Dawson missed weight for this one. Mark Madsen didn't. Aaron Johnson saying the Olympian for the win. Paul Baggs saying going with Mark Madsen. I've seen a lot of people talk about this one, Matt, because ever since Grant Dawson, missed the weight, this is a big troubling one. This is a former featherweight, 18-1, taking on a guy, Mark Madsen, that, listen, has he fought the greatest level of competition? I don't know.
Not necessarily.
But it's gotten better, I will tell you that. And for Mark Madsen, open plus 130, get up as high as a plus 180, and he's still about there, so not that many big changes from best fight odds. That's the amalgamation of the odds. Dawson open minus 150, minus 220. Do I like Madsen more because Grant Dawson missed weight? Sure. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
I just don't know how much that weight miss is going to affect the overall defensive grappling of Grant Dawson, because the reason I was so excited in this fight was that, okay, you're right, Mark Madsen, he hasn't fought the best guys in the UFC, but there has been a steady increase in his level of competition, which has culminated in this fight against Grant Dawson, which is a very difficult one. Dawson is well-rounded, we all know how good his offensive grappling is, so it is really going to test Mark Madsen, and Madsen's one of these weird fighters who, I used to say this about Raoni Barcelos all the time, it was, hey, it would have been nice if he came into the UFC like 4 years earlier. So we just had a little bit more time in his prime. So we might have been able to really go on that run.
The kid's like Gauthier. Now he's just somebody that we used to know, even though he's on a heater right now.
For Mark Madsen, he very much is that similar kind of fighter. He got into the sport very late because he is such a credentialed wrestler. So it hasn't really given him a lot of time to really kind of marinate in the UFC and get all that much better. So he is going to have to take that step up at some point, and this is that step up in competition. I just really hope that for Madsen's sake, let's say he does go out there, wins this fight, dominates it with his wrestling, looks really good. I hope people then don't discredit him and say, oh, he only looked good because Grant Dawson did miss weight. I just think that would be a huge disservice to Mark Madsen, because we all agree this is a difficult stylistic matchup for him going into it. So if he is able to win, weight miss or not, I still think we have to give him his flowers, because this is by far his best
Throw
win.
the weight miss out of the way. Grant Dawson, switching things up. Glory MMA and Fitness, good gym, American Top Team, best gym, all the great training partners you can work with. Obviously, we know that you have a big-time guy in Dustin Poirier fighting a guy in Michael Chandler coming up next week. Well, you get to chop it up. I hate that. With a guy like Poirier, with a guy like Mateusz Gamrot, with those Thiago Moiseses of the world. Grant Dawson is a little bit more of a Swiss Army knife when it comes to takedown ability, where you can work on the mat to get out of some of the bad positions. I have like flashbacks to not just Ricky Glenn beating the heck out of Gavin Tucker, but Ricky Glenn beating the heck out of Grant Dawson in the third round of their fight. That was at 155. And for Grant Dawson to have missed weight like this in this fight, I think Madsen slows down in a lot of his third rounds by a little bit. I think Grant Dawson could end up slowing down by a lot of it in even the second round. So this really does scare me with the pick. I'm going to stick with the pick of Grant Dawson in this fight, but I will tell everybody this. I know I talked about it, the Mark Madsen peekaboo, but it's not really a peekaboo to get out of the way. He'll duck his head a little bit all the time to the left side. Grant Dawson doesn't throw a lot for volume, throws a nice kick, backs out, throws kicks naked, and then does the spinorama where his opponent can take advantage of it. And Mark Madsen, even at the age of 38, has become a better striker for mixed martial arts since he's trained at Fight Ready. I would not be surprised at all if Mark Madsen wins this fight. And if you have a look at it, 43% of the fans at Fight Night Picks going Madsen, 57% going with Dawson. I think Dawson can get it done, and I think he can get into some really advantageous positions on the ground over Madsen and his Greco-Roman. But again, wouldn't be surprised if Madsen gets the win, and I see a lot of people going all over the place.
To quote Meek Mill, hold on, wait a minute. Y'all thought I was finished? I'm switching the pick to Mark Madsen. I couldn't tell you the last time I've switched a pick on this channel, and I definitely couldn't tell you the last time I've done it successfully. But since I do see these guys having very similar skill sets, and I do worry a lot about the fact that Grant Dawson is a former featherweight who has now missed weight at lightweight. Again, maybe I'm looking too much into it. I could be wrong on this, but I'm really concerned about the fact that Grant Dawson is going to have a very high work rate kind of a fight to beat someone like Mark Madsen. I do think that to beat Madsen, he's going to have to wear on him with the clinch, use his grappling a little bit. I do see him striking on the outside, but I still see this fight being fought at a very high pace, and if that is the case, I do ever so slightly favor Madsen. I think if he does find himself moving forward a lot in this fight, that might help him disguise some of his boxing combinations as takedown attempts, and I think if he can get the top position and just hold it again. I'm not saying Mark Madsen should make this fight entertaining, because if that is the case, it's going to give Grant Dawson a better chance, but I think if he can hold top position and be heavy on top, it gives him a great chance to win.
Yeah, the best part for me is I've watched Dawson win a fight just like this when he beat Nad Narimani. It was very much the same matchup. Dawson was able to do a lot of work on the feet. He was able to get it done on the mat, and he was able to bloody up Narimani and beat him by decision matter. Next fight, and this is the one that you were talking about, so I'll throw it right there. He's trolling. Nate Maness was trolling with the feet on the scale, but Nate Maness made weight successfully, so a slow golf clap to him because Maness is able to do it. But by the F, did he ever look bad on the scale? So Maness gets it done, he makes it, and I said if this one was at 135, I think Nate Maness beats Tagir Ulanbekov. And I think Tagir could also be a bantamweight. I think he has the frame that would support it, and he would hydrate up to it. I hate that a guy that has to rally in these fights in the UFC is then cutting that much extra weight this late in his career. Again, Nate Maness was a regional champ at 155, 145, and 135. And now this is his first fight at 125. I hate the weight cut. I like the fact that Nate Maness is a much better striker than Ulanbekov. I think Maness has really good, decent takedown defense. And I think he's adept on the ground. But I will go with Ulanbekov here. I think it's a sketchy fight regardless, but I don't like the weight cut for Maness, even though he's been trying to dunk on everybody on Twitter.
I just think Maness is going to have to work a lot in this fight, whether it's getting back up to his feet or defending that initial takedown attempt in the first place. And if that is the case, he's just finding himself in one of those exhausting fights where you're getting back up to your feet, then your base is taken out from under you again, kind of rinse and repeat. That's just going to suck the fight out from him even more. And we talk about weight misses a lot and how they could negatively affect a fighter. Having a tough weight cut that you still made successfully can still have negative effects on a fighter. Just because they don't end up giving up a percentage of their purse doesn't mean that the weight cut isn't negatively going to affect them.
People don't like him now, but think of it. Dillashaw, Killashaw, Dollar Billashaw,
Exactly.
125.
That's a very good
it
example.
Didn't really help him.
He successfully made weight look terrible while doing so, but again, to his credit, he was able to make his contractual obligation. But that wasn't really Dillashaw, right? Like, he got hurt by the first punch that hit him and he immediately went down. I think a lot of that was probably weight cut attributed, so I agree with you. I think if Manus was fighting at 135, if you just blew both these guys up an extra 10 pounds, it would be a really competitive matchup. I might not be ready to just completely say Nate Manus would win, but it would be a very fun fight. I just think at 125, that's a needed advantage for Ulanbekov, and he definitely has it in the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird one. Like, to me, Tagir Ulanbekov, I'm not the biggest fan as far as how high is the ceiling in this division. Now, he's a former Fight Night's global champ. He lost a majority decision to Shumagula. I bet you every flyweight just has a hard time sleeping tonight, thinking, man, I might have to take on Jalgas.
He's just pretty good across the board.
He's just going to walk right into some of my shots and try and take me down. But you have a look at the odds in this matchup. Ulanbekov's way too big of a favorite. Open to minus 180, minus 236. Manus open plus 155, plus 191. Some good wins, of course, for Manus at 135 pounds. His last two fights, rallying back. The Luke Sanders win. I put too much weight in Luke Sanders fights, but still, the win that he has over Tony Gravely is a good one, even though he gets starched in the first round and came back and won that one. For me, I'll go with Tagir Ulanbekov. Savas is saying, I'm sure Khabib trained him extra hard after the previous loss. I mean, I don't know, pal, but Khabib was a damn good coach at the pay-per-view, so I will tell you that much.
I'm sure he would be.
So I'm going to go with Tagir Ulanbekov. When we move into the co-main event, Matt, Neil Magny taking on Daniel Rodriguez. So let's talk about the fan vote on this one. 75% had Ulanbekov, 53% going D-Rod, 47% going with Neil Magny. And in the fight of the night, up there in that in the chat,
close too.
We've got what? 35% of you going Magny Rodriguez, 39% Bautista and Lopez. So Jerry Morse saying, here we go. VT saying D-Rod wins. D-Rod, did he beat Li Jingliang? Most people didn't think so.
It was a Sean O'Malley, Piotr Jan. There's like 5% of all fights that could go either way. That's one of them.
Taylors probably didn't think that Daniel Rodriguez won that fight. They got to support their guy Li Jingliang, let the guy wear his suit. But when you look at this matchup, Matt, for me, the thing that gives me a little bit of trepidation, Neil Magny in his two last fights, beats Max Griffin by split decision, gets knocked down early in that fight, rallies back, and in his fight against Shavkat Rakhmonov, gets outstruck, taken down, and ground out. Neil Magny, that kind of stuff doesn't happen very often. I thought Michael Chiesa would have been able to do that to Neil Magny.
He did. He took him down a bunch of times.
And he did. Will Daniel Rodriguez do that? Most likely not. We'll see how this fight goes. For Rodriguez, this fight was booked a few weeks ago. He was out of it due to an elbow infection. He's into it now. Looked like those hand troubles that kept him out of action for about a year were behind him in the fight against Li Jingliang. Didn't seem to nervous to engage in the striking, so you do like to see that. Will it be the boxing combinations of D-Rod out of California? Will it be Neil Magny with that, just like at this point in his career, just the consistency that we've seen out of him? And for a lot of people, and I saw a lot of people say, well, Daniel Rodriguez, younger, fresher fighter. Daniel Rodriguez actually older than Neil Magny.
I would say he's fresher.
That's wild.
He's younger in fight years, though, and I will argue this all day long.
No way, really?
But he's taken a fraction of the damage that Neil Magny has throughout his career. And the thing about Magny is, it's not like he just struggles with wrestlers. He struggles with guys who are specialists in any singular area of MMA. That's the thing about just being really well-rounded, because that's what Neil Magny is. There's no one area of his game that he's terrible at, but there's no one area of his game, other than his cardio, I would say. Like, that is an outlier, but you don't necessarily think of cardio as like wrestling or striking. But still, for Neil Magny, he doesn't really have any huge outliers in his skill set, and that's why when you go back and look at his record, guys like Lorenz Larkin have had success against him. Santiago Ponzinibbio looked really good in that main event opportunity against Magny too. But the weird thing about Magny is, when you count him out, he's going to look really good, and when you think he's going to look really good, that's when he will have a bit of a stale performance, because I go back to how good he looked against Anthony Rocco Martin and also Li Jingliang. Now, were they the most explosive of performances? No, not at all, but they were good veteran performances. It was a guy who knew when to stay at range, and a guy who understood that, hey, these guys are powerful punchers, they can hurt me at that distance. When they close the distance on me, I'm just going to clinch with them. Get rid of the separation so they can't really get the extension on their shots. And I could really see Neil Magny going back and having a very similar performance that he did against Li Jingliang against Daniel Rodriguez. And that's not just saying that because D-Rod had such a close fight with Li Jingliang. Stylistically, those two fighters just are very similar. I just think D-Rod is the more damaging guy after all. And I think if he is able to start damaging Neil Magny, especially early on in this fight, I think Magny's going to not go for as many takedown attempts, and he might be a little bit more tentative on the outside of the pocket. But I've had a bunch of people ask me about this fight this week, and I've been really split about it.
I mean, Malone Hart hits up a giant super chat.
Thank you, Malone
so you get
Hart.
this. And you know what? You're the fan of the day.
God, that might be awful.
That might be tough, but you get you're a fan, and I have some compressed air, so we get to have a little bit of fun with it. But Matt,
thank you, Malone Hart.
When we do focus in on this one, I definitely do.
Do you agree with that breakdown, though? Sorry.
Yeah, nuclear spaceships. Like, get the heck out of here. You're an idiot. Matt, when we do focus in on the matchup, yeah, I do. I mean, when I look at it for Neil Magny, there's a lot of areas where he can succeed. When I focus in on it for a guy like Daniel Rodriguez, and a lot of people picking him to win by knockout, they might be a little bit nervous with the fight against Rakhmonov, with the success that Max Griffin was able to have. Max Griffin's been having a lot of success as of late, even in some of these losses, very tight fights. But with Daniel Rodriguez in the UFC, the knock him down, drag him out type of fight that he had against Dwight Grant, the win that he has over Preston Parsons, he hasn't been knocking out guys this high up and with this stature. So it would mean
Kevin Lee a lot, though.
It would mean a lot for me if Rodriguez is able to win right here. I have to see it against a guy like Neil Magny, so it's more of a fade that way from me than anything. But if you do focus in on it, Rodriguez open plus 105, minus 103 right now. You look at it for Neil Magny in this one, open minus 125, minus 120 or thereabouts. Like I said, the fans actually have Daniel Rodriguez more so to win this one than they do have Neil Magny, but I certainly do appreciate that giant super chat from Malone Hart.
Thank you very much.
Supporting the channel in the super chat. Thank you so much. The likes are also very appreciated. If that's what you can give, then please give to the show. But a lot of pop and popcorn for me today, Matt, on the show. I made the shirt for the reason this afternoon.
So we're still split on this one?
Because this one's sketchy. Yeah, I'm not going to switch the pick. I'll stick with Neil Magny. The only switch of the pick was the travel delays and like the 50-50 nature with Jinh Frey, and that's what kind of won me over right there. And I'll probably get that wrong because the last time I switched a pick on a low-level women's fight, it was Pierre Rodriguez, Sam Hughes. But in this one, I'll stick with Neil Magny, and a lot of people going with Daniel Rodriguez. And you know what? He's got a ton of fans here with Fight Night picks.
Which is nice to see. It's cool when unranked or borderline ranked fighters have like a much bigger fan base than you would ever expect. Because, listen, there's bench players in the NBA who make millions of dollars and no one knows who they are. MMA fighters aren't necessarily compensated in the way that some of these other athletes are. So it is cool that some of these fighters can really optimize their platform and have a big fan base. Because I agree 100%. It really does seem like the fans get behind Daniel Rodriguez. And that's a really nice thing to see.
Yeah, a lot of 10-10 contracts. You're going to see a lot of those fights in December, January, and February, Matt. And our main event, Amanda Lemos. She came in late during the week. She missed Wednesday media day, but she made the weight successfully. 114.5 for the former bantamweight. That's where she debuted in the UFC. She's like Jessica Andrade. She didn't beat her, though. Marina Rodriguez hasn't fought Jessica Andrade, and if she did fight Andrade, I think she would lose.
It'd be a good fight, though.
But for Rodriguez, if she wins this fight, she wants a title. The UFC's marketing this week has been for UFC 281. Hasn't even been for this fight at all. They haven't talked about it. They put a couple of things out. And listen, that's fine. But Matt, when you do focus in on this one, Lemos, if she's going to get the win, first round, second round, I don't see her winning a decision in this fight, but I do see Marina Rodriguez doing
the basketball reference I wanted to make for this main event is, it's an easy one. People like to go, oh, who's the best point guard? Who's the best small forward shooting guard? Whatever. Right now in the NBA, it's probably Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker to be the best shooting guard. They're both very offensively oriented, very similar players in general. Wouldn't it be cool if for like the All-Star break, instead of doing the skills competition, they did like 1v1 Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell to finally figure it out? This fight to me is, hey, we're finally figuring out who the best shooting guard is in the division, because offensively, both these fighters are pretty similar. They're both very heavy-handed for the division. Now,
no, they're not.
Lemos is much more power-heavy than Rodriguez is, but Rodriguez is the type of fighter who does damage people with her strikes, so I would say she's more speed-oriented, she's more volume-oriented, but still, she is of that top tier of her striking, and I'm very curious to see how long is it going to take her to finally adjust to the power of someone like Amanda Lemos, because now, when you're fighting someone like Jessica Andrade, not only do you have to worry about the physicality and the hooks and the knockout power, but Andrade also has that grappling aspect to her game that a lot of people can forget about. I know it's hard to nowadays because of how good that guillotine is, but still, Lemos is going to bring a lot of that same offense to the game, but you're not going to have to worry as much about the takedown attempts that come with it, and that's why I could see Rodriguez having a lot of success with her own jab, moving around a little bit on the outside, but I do agree with your breakdown of the fight. I think in the first two rounds, it could be either fighter's fight, but as the fight progresses, I do think it's going to start to favor Marina Rodriguez, who has been in 5-round fights before, who we've seen get better better as the fight goes on. And for Lemos, it's going to stand out in a lot of people's minds, myself included, that Angela Hill fight. It's a pretty close fight, could have gone either way. And when you're having a close fight with someone like Angela Hill in a 15-minute fight, extend that by another 10 minutes against someone like Rodriguez. I think you can have difficulty.
The only reason it was close, Lemos almost got the finish in the first round. It was a 10-8 in round 2, round 3. She didn't have the gas, and the volume took over for somebody like Angela Hill.
You don't think Marina Rodriguez could tire out Lemos and look better and out-volume her as the fight goes on?
I think that's how she's going to win, and I disagree with the power punching aspect. I mean, Herb Dean does too. Did you watch the fight that Rodriguez had against Amanda Hebos? Herb didn't want it to end.
He knocked her out. She knocked her out twice.
Yeah, she did. But that's the only fight that we've seen in the UFC where she's displayed any amount of power. And we've even seen Polyana Viana do the exact same thing to somebody like Amanda Hebos and have success in those flurries.
So you don't think Rodriguez is a top-tier striker in the division?
I think she's a top-tier striker for a whole other reason. I think she's a top-tier striker with that cardio X factor that she has
still damaging
in her
is
back
my point,
pocket.
that's all.
I think she's very, very good in a lot of different aspects in this matchup. That's why I like Marina Rodriguez in this fight. And a lot of people talking about the fact that, yes, Parisian versus Sherman is off the card. 52% of the fans going with Rodriguez to get the win. Another one of those fights where you have a pretty decent favorite in this one, too. Rodriguez open -160, -233. Lemos open +130, +190. And if you are looking at this one, Matt, for me, there's so many big favorites on this card. And last week we had a fair amount of underdogs winning. There's always people out there that go, well, it happened last week and it's going to happen this weekend. But that just, the world doesn't work that way. So I do think, like VT says, you're going to have Rodriguez picking her apart from distance, winning out in this fight. We've seen fights where Lemos has tried to conserve the gas tank and turn it down on the volume, and that's ultimately what will cost her. But we have also seen fights where Lemos gets the fighter on the opposite side to fight inside of a mirror. You saw somebody like the former champ over with Invicta, old Brazilian gangster Lavinia Souza, where she just looked like she didn't show up for a fight in that one, and Lemos will take over.
I think for Lemos to have a lot of success in this fight, she should fight like Yoel Romero fought Israel Adesanya. Like, try to force out the fight from Rodriguez so she walks into your counter shots. Because if then she can get Rodriguez to overextend, that's going to make Lemos' job a lot easier because she really does have that outlier kind of power in this division. But I think this is going to be a very fun fight for as long as it lasts.
The big-time fight in that main event. Listen, fight of the night. Is it going to be Grant Dawson? Is it going to be Mark Madsen? Could it be Manuel Bautista? Could it be Benito Lopez? That is what you guys have right now. 40% of you saying it's going to be Bautista versus Lopez. You got 36 on Magny versus Rodriguez. Matt, we will stack the deck as we always do with question mark kicks. Donald E. Guys with the super chat. This is earmarked for Matt's purchase of the Big Lebowski because we can't be friends again until you watch it. Matt,
I'm sorry.
The Big Lebowski is available on Prime. Do you have a Prime account? I have a Prime account.
I don't.
Okay, so you can watch it on my Prime account.
Perfect.
You got to get back to everybody. It's one of my favorite movies, and I can't believe
I'm sorry, guys.
The rug really tied the room together, Matt.
I'm sure it did.
All right, Matt. Ramona, Pascual, Tamires, Vidal. Fade on Vidal. I've got Pascual, but I could understand if somebody has Vidal.
I got Vidal, but barely.
Matt going with Vidal. The next fight, Jake Hadley taking on Carlos Candelario. I have Hadley, Jake Hadley.
I have Hadley. He got a tough draw, I guess, his last time out against Nascimento. I think he will look a lot better this time.
VT, I don't even watch movies, and I like it. I was actually looking forward to the fight of the night. Parisian Sherman would have been a banger from Brandor in the super chat. That's appreciated. Yeah, it sucks. This is not Vietnam, dude. There are rules.
Sure.
Shut the F up, Donnie. Matt, Johnny Munoz Jr., Luidvik Sholinian. I like Munoz in the matchup. I don't like the odds.
I've got Kid Kvenbo. Goodness.
No Chill Dill saying that movie's overrated. How's it overrated in comparison to what? It's still a good movie. That's just like your opinion, man. Polyana Viana, Jinh Frey, all these references over Matt's head. I switched the pick to Frey. It's pop and popcorn.
I've also got Frey in this one.
Malone Hard, how do we get pop and popcorn merch? Listen, you know what? DM me on Instagram or Twitter. I'll send you the picture. You can iron it onto your own shirt. But only one shirt, and you can't resell them. Is that fair? Now it's into the world. So if you want the picture, you're out of your element, Donnie. both of us going with Frey in this one.
Yeah, I had her at the start of the week.
Mario Bautista, Benito Lopez. I'm going to be going with Mario Bautista here. And it makes me so mad that Benito Lopez missed weight because I think he's a damn good fighter. And I missed him for these 3 years and talked about him a lot.
He's a damn good fighter, but he's also fighting a really good fighter too in Mario Bautista. And I think this is a tough matchup for him. I do like Bautista, but Bautista. But hopefully at some point he does get a ranked opponent or a borderline ranked opponent because I do feel like if he's able to get the win over Benito Lopez, he is in line for that.
Michigonian likes the movie too. I mean, listen, Smokey was over the line. Miranda Maverick taking on Shanna Young, going with Miranda Maverick to win the fight in the rematch. I think she's going to be able to get it done.
Styles make fights, and this is a tough stylistic matchup for Shanna Young.
I don't like it if you got to cut hair to make weight. Minner taking on Shayilan Nuerdanbieke, going with Killcliff FC Zone, Shayilan Nuerdanbieke.
I've also got Nuerdanbieke.
The next fight, Matt, we have Grant Dawson taking on Mark Madsen. Matt just running buck wild, going with Mark Madsen, switching the pick.
I rarely switch picks, but again, I was worried about the weight miss from Grant Dawson. The fact that I do think this fight is going to go late for both guys, it does concern me when a guy misses weight, especially the fact that he has been forced to move up weight in the past, but this is going to be a very fun fight. Like I said, this is how we find out how good Mark Madsen really is, so I'm excited for it.
Speaking of bowling and bowling movies being the Big Lebowski, folks are gonna, we have quite a few people watching today. I read in CBC News, it was on CBC New Brunswick, I'm gonna find it, because people in the world don't know this, and it just, popped into my head. Candlepin documentary focuses on our peculiar brand of boxing, or bowling. I thought candlepin bowling was what the rest of the world did, and I thought the bowling in movies with the 3 fingers in the ball was weird. Candlepin bowling only exists in the east coast of Canada or the east coast of the United States and the Maritimes in Canada, and all our bowling alleys here are candlepin bowling. Does that, isn't that weird?
I knew this.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I found that out today. That's really, really crazy. So, yeah.
Not a single person listening to this right now cared about that. I'm sorry.
More people tuned in because of it. Tagir Ulanbekov taking on Nate Maness. I'm going to be going with 10-pin bowling, big in the Midwest. Yeah, we have candlepin bowling. Apparently they have it in Texas, too. And, you've only been talking about Mansour Barnaoui. Picked up a big win over Piccolotti. We know. Matt, in this one, going with Tagir Ulanbekov.
I've also got Tagir Ulanbekov. Again, if Nate Maness can show up and be the best version of himself at 125, that'd be nice to see.
A lot of people care about this. Look, Pete Weber's a part of the set design, Matt. People care about bowling. I care about bowling. Both going with...
Other than Mookie Betts, name one professional bowler right now.
Pete Weber.
He doesn't even play anymore.
Yeah, he does.
Other than Pete Weber, because he's right behind you.
Going with Neil Magny in the matchup between Magny versus Daniel Rodriguez.
This is going to be fight of the night. I truly believe it. Now, when I say that, I do think Daniel Rodriguez is going to win this fight. It's because I do think Neil Magny is going to fight it at range at a certain point. I don't know if his wrestling is good enough to just go out there and really take down Daniel Rodriguez over and over again, so I think he might have to use his clinch a lot. And if that is the case, D-Rod's a guy who can generate a lot of power from up close, and I think if Neil Magny does try to use that Li Jing Liang, Rocco Martin type of technique, it might actually crash into the power of D-Rod and help Rodriguez out. But again, this fight, similar to the Madsen matchup, is one of those we're going to learn a lot more about one of these fighters, and those are the fights that I like the most.
You got a lot of bowlers over there, and VT candlepin's the little ball that's a little bit bigger than a softball, and they're the little candlepin bowling pins.
And don't think I hate bowling, guys. The first sport I ever played growing up, I was in a bowling league.
Marina Rodriguez taking on Amanda Lemos in this matchup, going with Marina Rodriguez. Matt, this card, out of 10, what are you saying? Now that we finished the week, the videos are out there, question mark kicks over.
I think the co-main event for a co-main event is a 9 out of 10, honestly, especially for the Fight Night co-main events we've been getting as of late. I think the main event is an 8 out of 10, if I'm being honest, because it's probably a title eliminator. The rest of the card leaves a little bit to be desired, though, for being honest, so I think it's a little top-heavy. I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10, because I'm genuinely excited for the fights at the top.
I'm going to go with a 3.5 out of 10. It's one of the worst cards this year, and I'm not joking. I think it's an awful card. There's some fighters to get excited about. There's some fights that have no divisional relevance whatsoever, including 5 fighters that missed weight, and then after cutting hair, 4 fighters that missed weight. A fight that fell out being Parisian versus Chase Sherman. It's not a good card, and I hope for a lot.
Day of sunshine.
I hope for a lot next weekend, Matt. You know why? Because we put a lot of gosh darn work into these friggin' things, and we have one of the bigger pay-per-view cards that you're gonna have coming up. I think it's absolutely absolutely amazing. This is a good one.
The fact that the third best fight on the card could probably main event its own pay-per-view is kind of insane. Like, Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier is one of those non-title fights that you really hope just gets a 5-round atmosphere because it's that good. I know, unfortunately.
I wish it was.
Same, I know. It would have been that much better. Pereira's the only guy who has a legitimate claim to being as good of a striker as Israel Adesanya in the cage, so that'll be a great fight. And you know Carla Esparza is going to want to get that lasting memory of her last fight out of people's minds, because it was terrible. Let's just say it was.
Hey, UFC, don't throw out her highlight fight as the rematch versus Rose Namajunas.
To be fair, Wei Li looked phenomenal against Joanna her last time out there, so you know she's always going to show up to fight. I think that's a great main event. I saw somebody in the chat ask, do you have Ramirez or Bivol? I think Bivol's probably going to win. He's like a minus 400 favorite, but Zuto Ramirez is like really good. He throws a trillion punches.
Matt, it's a card. It exists. Next weekend, UFC 281. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Really looking forward to that entire card. Thank you so much for joining in with Question Mark Kicks. Matt gave it a 6.5 out of 10. I gave it a 3.5 out of 10. But regardless of what you give it, you guys tuned into a subpar card. So listen, we really do appreciate you. The super chats, Donald E. Guys, Malone Hard, everybody that threw out a super chat, that's much appreciated. The likes, they are certainly appreciated as well. We're going to do our best for the picks this week and hopefully end up in the plus. And next weekend, it's going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun. So make sure you tune in for that. If you're not subscribed, please do. It's appreciated, the likes, all of the engagement. The chat was popping off this week, so thank you so much for tuning in. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. And as we always say, let's get into it.